November 2008, Zimbabwe. A woman walks into a bakery in Harare carrying a shopping bag. Not for groceries, for money. She needs the bag to carry 100 billion Zimbabwe dollars just to buy 3 eggs. 3 eggs. By the time she reaches the counter, the price has changed. Not because the baker is greedy, because in the 20 minutes it took her to walk from the bank, inflation made her money worth less. Prices were doubling every 24.7 hours. Every single day, everything cost twice as much as yesterday. A loaf of bread that was $1 billion on Monday morning was $2 billion by Tuesday, $4 billion by Wednesday, $8 billion by Thursday. By mid-November 2008, Zimbabwe's annual inflation rate hit 89.7 sextillion %. That's 89.7 with 21 zeros after it, in numbers so big it breaks calculators. ATMs gave data overflow error messages because they couldn't process withdrawals with that many zeros. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe printed a $100 trillion note. 100 trillion. The highest denomination banknote ever printed in human history, and it couldn't buy a bus ticket. But here's what nobody tells you. This wasn't a complex economic mystery. This wasn't some sophisticated financial crisis that required PhD economists to understand. This was a man with a printing press who refused to stop pressing the button. That's it. That's the whole story. His name was Gideon Gono, governor of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. And over 90 days, from August to November 2008, he committed economic murder with the simplest, stupidest trick in history. He printed money to pay bills. Today you're going to see how the breadbasket of Africa became a basket case. How a country that once exported food to its neighbors ended up with citizens who couldn't afford to eat. And how one idiot with a printing press destroyed 3 generations of wealth in less time than it takes to finish a college semester. Let me show you what it felt like to live through this. It's August 2008. You're 38 years old. You're a nurse at Harare Central Hospital. You've worked there for 12 years, respectable job. You help people, you save lives. Your monthly salary is 1 billion Zimbabwe dollars. Sounds impressive, right? Except a loaf of bread costs $1.6 trillion. Your entire month's salary can't buy 1 loaf of bread. You show up to work anyway. Why? Because what else are you going to do? At least the hospital sometimes gets donations of food from aid organizations. At least there's a chance to eat something. But the hospital is collapsing around you. There's no medicine. The suppliers won't accept Zimbabwe dollars anymore. They want US dollars, South African rand, anything real. The government promises to pay in local currency. The suppliers laugh and walk away. There's no electricity. The power company can't afford fuel. There's no running water. The Water Authority's budget was consumed by inflation before they could pay their bills. You're working in a hospital with no medicine, no power, no water. You're a nurse who can't nurse because there's nothing to nurse with. Your neighbor, Mr. Ndlovu, he's 71. He's a retired teacher. Worked for 40 years educating Zimbabwe's children. He has a pension, $600 million per month. In January 2008, his pension could buy groceries for a week. By August, it can't buy a single potato. 1 potato. That's what 40 years of service is worth. He comes to your door crying. He's holding his pension check like it's a sick joke. I taught the president mathematics, he says. I taught him economics. And this is what he does to us? You have no answer. What can you say? That the government is printing so much money that the paper it's printed on is worth more than the number written on it? That children are using million-dollar notes as confetti? That people are burning cash in their fireplaces because it's cheaper than buying firewood? Your wife works at a bank. She comes home with stories that sound like fiction. The bank's main computer crashed. Why? Because the inflation calculations exceeded the maximum number the system could handle. The programmers tried to fix it. They couldn't. The numbers were too big. So the bank stopped posting interest, stopped updating balances, just gave up. What's the point of tracking accounts when $1 million becomes worthless before you can record the transaction? Every day is a nightmare of mathematics. You get paid on Friday. You run, literally run to the nearest store. Not to buy groceries, to buy anything real. Soap, matches, sugar, anything that will hold value better than cash. There's a woman ahead of you in line. She's buying cooking oil. She has a wheelbarrow full of cash. Not metaphorically, Literally. A wheelbarrow. The cashier is counting the bills with a machine. The machine jams. Too many bills. They start weighing the money instead of counting it. The woman leaves her wheelbarrow at the store, takes the cooking oil, leaves the wheelbarrow, because the wheelbarrow is worth more than the cash it was carrying. You see your life savings evaporate in real time. In January 2008, you had $50 billion in the bank. Enough to send your daughter to university someday. By August, it can buy a single chicken. Maybe. Your daughter asks you, "Daddy, why is money worthless?" She's 12 years old. She's learning economics faster than she should. She's learning that governments can lie, that promises mean nothing, that the grown-ups have no idea what they're doing. The worst part? Everyone knows why this is happening. Everyone. The newspaper vendors, the taxi drivers, the street kids. They all know. It's because of the farms. In 2000, President Robert Mugabe decided to reclaim Zimbabwe's commercial farms. Zimbabwe was the world's sixth largest producer of tobacco. By 2008, production had collapsed to 21% of the 2000 level. Zimbabwe was once called the breadbasket of southern Africa. Now it's struggling to feed its own population. About 45% of the population is malnourished. When you destroy the farms, you destroy agricultural exports. When you destroy exports, you destroy foreign currency revenue. When you destroy foreign currency revenue, the government can't buy imports, and can't buy fuel, can't buy medicine, can't buy food. So what does the government do? Print money. Print money to pay salaries, print money to buy food, print money to pay the army so they don't coup you. And who's in charge of the printing? Gideon Gono, the Reserve Bank governor, the man with the magic printing press. In February 2006, Gono announced the government had printed 20.5 trillion Zimbabwe dollars to buy foreign currency to pay IMF arrears. In May 2006, another 60 trillion was printed. He's not even hiding it. He's announcing it in press conferences. He's proud of it. He thinks he's saving Zimbabwe. In speeches, Gono says things like, "We're keeping the economy alive. Without our interventions, there would be total collapse." But Gono, you idiot, you are the collapse. You're the reason prices double every day. You're the reason Mr. Ndlovu's pension can't buy a potato. And here's the really insane part. In 2007, the government declared inflation illegal. Anyone who raised prices was subject to arrest. Think about that. They're printing trillions of dollars, and then arresting store owners for raising prices. They're creating inflation and making it illegal to acknowledge inflation. Officials arrested numerous corporate executives for changing their prices. You're a business owner. Your costs triple overnight because suppliers demand payment in US dollars. But if you raise your prices to reflect your costs, the government arrests you. So what do? You close. You stop selling. Better to have no business than to have a business that lands you in prison. By September 2008, half the stores in Harare are empty. Literally empty. Shelves bare. Not because there's no food in the country, because nobody will sell food for Zimbabwe dollars. A black market explodes. Everything's traded in US dollars, South African rand, even Botswana pula. Anything except the local currency. The official currency of Zimbabwe becomes a joke, a prop, toilet paper with numbers on it. But here's where it gets truly cosmically stupid. Gideon Gono wasn't evil. He wasn't trying to destroy Zimbabwe. He genuinely, honestly believed he was saving it. In 2008, he gave an interview to a financial magazine. He said, and I'm quoting, "I've been condemned by traditional economists who say that printing money is responsible for inflation. They're wrong. Our inflation is caused by sanctions, by sabotage, by enemies of the state." He's blaming everyone except himself. The West, sanctions, saboteurs. Never mind that he's literally printing money to pay government bills. Never mind that basic economics says printing money causes inflation. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else. He thinks he's found a way around the rules. He says, "They told me I couldn't print money and avoid inflation. But look, we're still functioning. People are still eating. The government still operates. Except people aren't eating." Unemployment rates soared. The quality of life for the average Zimbabwean deteriorated significantly. The government doesn't operate, it staggers like a zombie. But in Gono's mind, he's a hero. He's keeping the lights on. He's meeting payroll. He's holding the country together with printing press and prayer. The tragic irony? He's making it worse. Every trillion he prints makes the next trillion worth less, which means he needs to print more to have the same effect, which makes everything worth less. A death spiral by design. The Reserve Bank kept arranging printing of banknotes from overseas suppliers. One Munich company was receiving more than 500,000 euros per week for delivering banknotes equivalent to 170 trillion Zimbabwe dollars a week. Think about that. Zimbabwe is so broke, it can't buy medicine, but it's paying €500,000 per week to a German company to print worthless money. Money that will be worthless before the ink dries. And Gono keeps doing it, because he's trapped. If he stops printing, the government can't pay salaries. If the government can't pay salaries, the army mutinies. If the army mutinies, Mugabe falls. If Mugabe falls, Gono loses his job. Probably loses his life, so he prints and prints and prints. By October 2008, Zimbabwe is printing money in denominations that don't exist in the English language. 10 trillion, 50 trillion, 100 trillion. The Reserve Bank redenominated the currency 3 times. First in August 2006, removing 3 zeros. Then in July 2008, removing 10 zeros. Then in February 2009, removing 12 more zeros. The third redenomination meant the new currency was worth 10 trillion original dollars. They removed 25 zeros total. 25. But removing zeros doesn't fix inflation. It's like treating cancer with aspirin. You're addressing the symptom while the disease metastasizes. The real fix is obvious to everyone. Stop printing money, balance the budget, accept austerity, let zombie companies die, restructure the economy. But that requires courage. It requires telling Mugabe no. It requires accepting short-term pain to prevent long-term catastrophe. Gono doesn't have that courage, so he takes the coward's way out. He keeps printing. By November 2008, the Zimbabwe dollar is dead. Citizens had increasingly been using foreign currency in daily exchanges. In December 2008, the Reserve Bank licensed around 1,000 shops to deal in foreign currency. The government officially gives up. They abandon their own currency. In April 2009, Zimbabwe stopped printing its currency, and currencies from other countries were used. The Zimbabwe dollar, once a symbol of independence and pride, becomes a collector's item. Tourists buy $100 trillion notes as souvenirs. "I'm a trillionaire," they joke. Meanwhile, real Zimbabweans, people like you and Mr. Ndlovu, have lost everything. And Gideon Gono, he stays in his job until 2013. No prosecution, no accountability. He even writes a book defending his actions, calls it Creative Monetary Policy. Creative. He calls the worst hyperinflation in modern history creative. So what's the lesson from this catastrophe? First, understand this. Money is trust. That's all it is. Paper with numbers on it only works if everyone agrees to pretend it has value. The second people stop believing, the second they realize the emperor has no clothes, the whole system collapses. Gideon Gono destroyed trust. Every trillion he printed was a lie to the Zimbabwean people. A promise that would never be kept. A theft of value from everyone holding cash. By November 2008, a nurse's life savings, a teacher's pension, a farmer's sale proceeds, all became worthless. Decades of work, gone, stolen. Not by criminals, but by the central bank. Second lesson, expertise without wisdom is dangerous. Gideon Gono had a degree in economics. He'd worked in banking his whole career. He understood monetary theory. He could cite Friedman and Keynes, but he didn't have the wisdom to know when to stop, or the courage to say no to power. The smartest people in the room are often the most dangerous, because they can rationalize anything. They can build elaborate theories to justify stupidity. They can convince themselves that 2 + 2 = 5 if their job depends on it. Third lesson. Inflation is a tax, the cruelest tax ever invented, because it falls hardest on the people who can least afford it. Rich Zimbabweans. They saw it coming. They moved money offshore, bought real estate, converted to dollars. They were fine. Mr. Ndlovu. He had his pension in local currency. No choice, no options. He starved while rich people stayed rich. Inflation doesn't hurt everyone equally. It's a wealth transfer from the powerless to the powerful. from savers to debtors, from the prudent to the reckless. Fourth lesson, and this is the one that should terrify you. Zimbabwe was the second worst hyperinflation in recorded history. Second. And it happened in 2008, not 1923, not 1946, 2008, the age of smartphones and the internet. Modern Zimbabwe did what Weimar Germany did, but with better computers, which means hyperinflation isn't ancient history. It's not a relic of primitive economic systems. It can happen anywhere, anytime, to anyone. All it takes is one idiot with a printing press who refuses to admit he's wrong. Right now, today, there are central banks around the world printing money. Quantitative easing, they call it. Balance sheet expansion, asset purchases, fancy words for the same thing Gono did, creating money out of nothing to finance government spending. They promise it's different this time. They promise they have it under control. They promise inflation will stay contained. Gideon Gono promised the same things, right up until prices were doubling every day. The final, most painful lesson. Hyperinflation destroys more than wealth. It destroys values. It destroys the social contract. When you watch your parents' life savings become worthless, you learn that playing by the rules is for suckers. When you see the government lie about inflation while arresting store owners for raising prices, you learn that authority is corrupt. Zimbabwe's economic collapse led to social unrest and political instability. An entire generation grew up learning that nothing is real, nothing can be trusted, and the only way to survive is to cheat before you get cheated. That's Gideon Gono's real legacy. Not just economic collapse, cultural collapse, moral collapse. Zimbabwe today, 15 years later, still hasn't recovered. The government introduced a new currency in 2019. Within months, inflation soared above 500% again. In 2023, they launched Zimbabwe Gold, ZiG, a digital currency backed by gold, Zimbabwe's sixth currency in 16 years. 6 currencies in 16 years. Because once you destroy trust, you can't rebuild it by printing new money with a different name. The Zimbabwean people learned the hard way. You can't print your way to prosperity. You can only print your way to poverty. But the lesson doesn't stay learned. Because every generation thinks they're smarter. Every central banker thinks they've found the cheat code. Every government thinks the rules don't apply to them, until one day, a nurse needs a shopping bag to carry money to buy eggs. And by the time she reaches the store, the price has doubled. And everyone realizes, too late, that the printing press isn't a solution. It's a suicide machine. So now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching this from. Your city, your country, because Zimbabwe's story isn't over, it's repeating. Are you seeing your central bank stimulating the economy with printed money? Are you seeing inflation that doesn't match official numbers? Are you seeing your savings lose value while asset prices skyrocket? Tell me what you're seeing on the ground. Let's document the next hyperinflation before it reaches 89 sextillion%. And if this video showed you how fast a currency can melt when idiots run the printing press, hit that subscribe button. This is Collapso Doll, where we prove that the stupidest mistakes come from the smartest people. See you in the next collapse.